Dozens of Russian targets have already been detected and struck by drones across several frontline sectors. But near Mariupol, the warning is becoming even sharper. Russia thought this was a supply road. Ukraine turned it into a front line. Russian military trucks and fuel tankers no longer need to reach the trenches to become part of the battle. They are being watched on the roads behind the front, on routes Moscow depends on to keep pressure on Donetsk. Along the road from Mariupol to Taganrog and the route from Mariupol to Volnovakha, Ukrainian forces have launched new drone attacks against supply vehicles, fuel carriers, and military convoys moving through Russian-controlled rear areas. The risk is not only the loss of a few vehicles. If fuel burns on the road, artillery may fire less. If trucks arrive late, infantry may lack ammunition, food, spare parts, or the support needed to move with confidence. In Donetsk, where Russia is still using infantry, artillery, drones, and FAB glide bombs to keep pressure on Ukrainian lines, one threatened supply route can slow the whole offensive machine. This story is not just about drones destroying trucks. It is about a larger lesson in modern war. Trenches may be where the fighting is seen, but the road behind them may decide whether the attack can continue. So is Ukraine only burning Russian vehicles, or is it cutting into the rhythm of Russia's entire offensive machine? The first danger for Russian logistics near Mariupol is that the road itself has started to behave like a front line. Ukrainian forces are not only waiting for Russian troops near trenches or ruined villages. They are reaching into the routes behind the battle area, where trucks, fuel tankers, repair vehicles, and military cargo move before the next assault can even begin. A Russian convoy may leave a staging area with a simple mission: move along a familiar road, keep the delivery on schedule, and reach the next military point before Ukrainian fire can interfere. On the ground, that may look routine. The drivers know the route. The vehicles keep distance. The road appears open. But from above, the same movement can look like a pattern that has already been studied. This is why the strikes around Mariupol matter. The Mariupol to Taganrog road and the Mariupol to Volnovakha route are not just lines on a map. They are movement channels that help Russia push supplies toward Donetsk. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food, and personnel all depend on roads like these. If those routes become unsafe, the pressure does not stay in the rear. It moves forward into the fighting units that depend on each delivery. The key difference is where the hunt begins. These vehicles are not being targeted only after they reach the edge of combat. They are being watched while still inside Russian-controlled rear areas, where commanders usually expect more order and less immediate danger. That changes the meaning of distance. A road behind the front no longer guarantees safety if a drone can find a truck before it reaches the main battle line. The attack does not need to start with a sudden dive. A drone can stay above the road and follow the convoy with patience. It can read the direction of travel, the spacing between vehicles, and the moment when one truck slows near a bend or a narrow section. That waiting period is important because the strike becomes more dangerous when the target has fewer choices left. From the Russian side, the first minutes may still feel normal. The convoy moves forward, and no shell lands nearby. No Ukrainian armored vehicle appears ahead. No infantry ambush breaks from the tree line. The threat is quieter than that. It is already watching, but it has not yet revealed itself. That silence is what makes the road feel safe until the moment it is not. Once a fuel tanker or military truck is hit, the damage spreads beyond the burning vehicle. The rest of the convoy must react. Some drivers may stop. Others may try to turn away or increase speed. A blocked route can force the following vehicles into confusion, and a delayed convoy can break the timing of the entire delivery plan. In logistics, minutes matter because support at the front depends on a chain that must stay connected. This is the new pressure Ukraine is trying to create. The goal is not always to destroy every vehicle on the road. It is enough to make the road unreliable. If Russian commanders must ask whether a route is watched, whether a convoy should be split, or whether a delivery should move at a different hour, then the strike has already reached deeper than the explosion. The battle near Mariupol therefore begins before the visible blast. It begins when a supply road becomes a watched corridor, and when ordinary movement becomes a military risk. If a logistics route is now under constant drone observation, should Russia keep using the same road or pull its supply system farther back? Share your view in the comments. The second stage of the battle is not about how many vehicles are destroyed. It is about how Ukrainian drones create a full attack chain before the Russian convoy understands that the road has already been read. The first role belongs to the eyes above the route. A reconnaissance UAV or observation drone does not need to strike anything at once. It only needs to find movement and stay with it long enough to understand the convoy's behavior. From that position, Ukrainian operators can see direction, speed, spacing, and small changes in the column. A road that looks empty from the ground becomes a live map from the air. Once the convoy is found, the attack enters a slower and more dangerous phase. The drone does not rush into the first vehicle it sees. It follows the movement and waits for a better moment. A truck may turn toward a narrow road. A fuel tanker may slow near a curve. A supply vehicle may stop close to a staging point where other equipment is gathered. These small moments matter because they reduce the driver's choices and give the attacking drone a cleaner path. This is where FPV drones and Hornet drones become dangerous against Russian logistics. They can attack vehicles that are moving, but they become even more effective when a target is forced into a weak position. Fuel tankers and cargo trucks do not have the same protection as tanks or infantry fighting vehicles. Their value is high, but their defense is limited. If they carry fuel, ammunition, spare parts, or military cargo, one strike can remove more than a machine. It can remove the load that was meant to support the next phase of combat. The tension of the strike comes from the waiting. Russian drivers may believe they are still inside a safer rear area because no direct fire is visible. There is no trench line in front of them and no artillery blast on the road yet. But the drone team is already choosing the angle. It can approach from above, from the side, or from a low path that gives the crew very little time to react. By the time the threat becomes visible, the target may already be inside the final seconds of the attack. A single hit can then break the convoy's order. If a fuel vehicle burns in the wrong place, the road may become blocked. If a truck stops suddenly, the vehicles behind it must decide whether to halt, turn, or pass through danger. That decision happens under pressure, and pressure weakens coordination. Drivers lose the smooth rhythm of the route, and the convoy becomes easier to separate into smaller targets. This is why the strike chain matters more than the explosion alone. Ukraine is not only hitting metal, it is hitting timing. A convoy has value because it moves as part of a schedule. It must leave, travel, arrive, unload, and return within a larger plan. When a drone forces that schedule to break, the damage can move beyond the road and reach the units waiting for supplies near Donetsk. From a military point of view, this is control of movement. Ukrainian drone teams are not trying to replace every artillery battery or every long-range weapon. They are using small platforms to make Russian routes less predictable and more costly. The moment a commander must reroute trucks, split a convoy, delay a delivery, or send more protection, the drone has already changed the shape of the operation. One small drone cannot replace the weight of artillery, but if it forces an entire convoy to change direction, it has already touched the larger battle. In this kind of war, the target is not only the vehicle, the target is the rhythm that keeps the offensive alive. Donetsk remains the battlefield where Russian pressure is felt most sharply, but that pressure depends on roads far behind the visible fighting. Infantry assaults, artillery fire, drones, and FAB glide bombs can keep Ukrainian defenses under strain. Yet none of these tools operate alone. They need fuel, ammunition, repair parts, transport, and evacuation routes to stay active over time. This is why the strikes around Mariupol carry more weight than a normal rear area attack. The road does not have to be close to a trench to shape the battle. If it feeds the forces pushing toward Donetsk, then every delay on that route can reach the front in a practical way. A late truck may mean a gun battery fires fewer rounds. A missing fuel load may keep a vehicle parked longer than planned. A damaged transport line may force commanders to choose which unit receives support first. On the front line, Russian infantry may still be ordered forward. The assault group may move through broken ground, tree lines, and ruined settlements with the same mission as before. But the confidence behind that movement changes when support becomes less certain. Soldiers can advance with more risk when they believe artillery will cover them. Vehicles will bring supplies, and wounded troops can be moved out. When that support system slows, the same ground becomes harder to cross. Artillery shows this connection clearly. A gun crew near Donetsk does not only need a target. It needs shells delivered at the right time, fuel for movement, and spare parts after heavy use. If resupply becomes irregular, fire missions can shorten. The gun may still exist, and the crew may still be trained, but the rhythm of support becomes weaker. That matters because infantry assaults often rely on suppressive fire before movement begins. Fuel creates another pressure point. Armored vehicles, trucks, engineering machines, and evacuation vehicles all depend on steady supply. When tankers are hit or forced to use longer routes, the problem spreads quietly. Vehicles may still be available, but commanders become more careful about when to move them. A machine that cannot be refueled with confidence becomes less useful during a fast-changing fight. This is the meaning of a front line behind the front line. The trench is where the clash becomes visible, but the road behind it decides how much force can be brought forward. A battle is not only won by the men who reach the contact line, it is also shaped by the trucks that arrive before them, the fuel that keeps engines running, and the ammunition that allows fire support to continue. Russia can still maintain assaults in Donetsk, and one damaged route will not stop the entire campaign by itself. The more serious issue is cost. If logistics must move at different hours, take longer paths, split into smaller groups, or wait for safer conditions, each attack becomes heavier to organize. The pressure does not disappear, but it loses speed and flexibility. That is why Ukraine's drone campaign around Mariupol should be read as more than a strike on vehicles. It is an attempt to disturb the timing behind Russian operations. When the rear line becomes uncertain, the front line feels it through shorter fire support, slower movement, and more cautious planning. If this kind of analysis helps explain why a supply road can decide the course of a battle, take a moment to like the video. The real story is not only what burns on the road, it is how that burning vehicle can change what happens miles away near Donetsk. Russia's rear area is no longer a place where logistics can move with full confidence. The strikes around Mariupol show that the danger zone is widening, and the space behind the front line is becoming part of the fight in a more direct way. For Russian units, distance once offered a basic form of protection. A truck moving far from the trench line could expect more time, more control, and less immediate threat. That logic is now under pressure. Ukrainian drones are reaching into areas where supply officers, drivers, and escorts may have believed the main danger was lower. A road near the rear can still look calm, but calm ground no longer means safe ground. This shift comes from the growing mix of drone systems. Short-range FPV drones can hunt closer to the front. Longer-range platforms can reach deeper targets. Between them, medium-range drones are filling a dangerous gap, and this creates pressure across a wider belt behind Russian positions. Some reports describe this zone as roughly 20 to 300 kilometers behind the front line, which means the old buffer around logistics is getting smaller. That matters because Russian supply movement depends on predictable habits. Trucks need routes. Fuel needs storage points. Repair teams need places to gather damaged equipment. Convoys need timing that can be repeated and protected. Once Ukrainian forces begin watching these habits from above, routine becomes a weakness. A road used too often can be studied. A stopping point used too regularly can become a target. A convoy schedule can turn into a pattern. Russian commanders now face a difficult choice. They can push depots farther back, but that makes each delivery longer. They can split convoys into smaller groups, but that increases the number of trips and stretches control. They can add escorts, but escorts also need fuel, drivers, coordination, and protection. They can move at night, but thermal FPV and reconnaissance UAVs can still find engines, bodies, and recently used equipment through heat signatures. None of these choices fully solves the problem. Each one only moves the risk into a different shape. A longer route may avoid one dangerous road, but it burns more fuel and takes more time. A smaller convoy may be harder to destroy in one strike, but it can also arrive in pieces and weaken the delivery schedule. Night movement may reduce visibility to the human eye, but it does not erase the heat of a vehicle or the trail of movement seen from above. This is where the psychological effect becomes important. A driver who once saw the road as familiar now has to treat it as uncertain. A commander who once trusted a supply path must ask whether the same route has already been watched. Even before a drone appears, the fear of observation changes behavior. Vehicles slow earlier. Stops become shorter. Crews avoid open areas. Decisions that once felt routine now carry doubt. Ukraine does not need to claim full control over every rear area to create this effect. It only needs to make Russian logistics question whether the next road, depot, or staging point is already under observation. That uncertainty is powerful because logistics works best when it is steady, boring, and repeatable. Drone pressure attacks exactly those qualities. The deeper message is clear. The rear is no longer separate from the battle. It is becoming a moving, exposed, and contested space where every delivery must be planned as if it could be seen. When the rear loses safety, the issue is no longer one convoy being hit. The entire supply corridor must change how it survives. The story does not end around Mariupol, because those roads are part of a larger military network that connects the Sea of Azov, Donetsk, occupied southern Ukraine, and Crimea. What looks like a local drone strike on a truck route can become a test of the wider corridor Russia uses to move fuel, ammunition, equipment, and troops across the southern theater. Mariupol sits inside that network like a key junction. One route points toward Volnovakha and the pressure line near Donetsk. Another opens toward Taganrog and the Russian rear. Farther south and west, the same logistics logic stretches toward Berdyansk, Melitopol, and Jankoy. On a map, these places may look separated by distance. In war, they are connected by movement. This is why the strikes around Mariupol carry a larger meaning. Ukraine is not only trying to hit vehicles near one city. It is testing whether Russia can still move supplies across a corridor that supports several directions at once. If one section becomes dangerous, the pressure can spread to the next. If drivers hesitate near Mariupol, commanders must think about what happens farther down the line. HUR has also described strikes against the Crimea to Donetsk corridor, with sections between Berdyansk, Melitopol, and Jankoy placed under Ukrainian drone fire control. That phrase matters because it does not always mean the road is physically occupied. It means movement can be watched, timed, and attacked. A vehicle may still be able to pass, but it no longer passes with full confidence. For Russia, this corridor is not just a road system, it is a military backbone. It helps link the occupied south with the Eastern Front, and it gives Russian forces a way to move heavy equipment, fuel, and cargo without relying on one single route. If Ukrainian drones keep reaching deeper into this system, Russia must treat more of the map as exposed ground. The effect is not instant collapse. A logistics corridor can still function while under pressure, but its value changes when every movement requires more planning. A convoy may wait longer before leaving. A tanker may need an escort. A transport unit may avoid a direct road and take a slower route. A supply officer may hold back cargo until the sky seems quieter. These choices keep movement alive, but they also make it heavier. This is where the map becomes the story. Mariupol is one link. Volnovakha pulls the pressure toward Donetsk. Taganrog connects the route back toward Russia. Berdyansk and Melitopol extend the problem across the Sea of Azov region. Convoy brings the Crimea connection into view. Together, these points show that Ukraine is not only striking trucks, it is trying to turn the corridor itself into a contested zone. A logistics corridor does not have to be completely cut to lose strength. If it becomes slower, riskier, and more expensive to defend, the goal is achieved. If every delivery must move under the threat of drone observation, then the corridor becomes less like a secure rear line and more like a long battlefield stretched across roads, depots, junctions, and staging areas. This brings the central question back into focus. Ukraine is not simply burning Russian vehicles. It is trying to make Russian transport operate under pressure from the moment it enters the route. If Ukrainian fire control keeps expanding across these roads, can Russia maintain the same offensive rhythm in Donetsk? Or will it have to slow down to protect the supply system behind the assault? What happened around Mariupol may look like a series of drone strikes, but the deeper story is much bigger. Ukraine is not only hitting Russian trucks, fuel tankers, and supply vehicles. It is attacking the rhythm behind Russia's assaults. When a logistics road is watched from above, every moving vehicle can become a signal. When fuel burns before it reaches the front, the impact can travel forward to artillery crews, infantry groups, armored vehicles, and the next Russian push toward Donetsk. This is the main lesson of the battle. Russia can still use infantry, artillery, drones, and FAB glide bombs to keep pressure on Ukraine. But that pressure depends on supplies arriving at the right time. If the rear system becomes slower and more dangerous, the offensive machine becomes heavier to move. So the question is not only whether Russia can keep attacking Donetsk. The harder question is whether its supply system can keep up with the cost of that attack. If logistics becomes the weak point, the battle may be decided before Russian infantry reaches the trench. If you think logistics is now Russia's biggest vulnerability, leave your thoughts in the comments. If you believe Russia can still adapt, share that view as well. Like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to Military Force for more clear analysis on the weapons, battles, and geopolitical shocks shaping today's war.